Hello and welcome to the Rob Burgess Show. I'm of course your host, Rob Burgess. On this, our 90th episode, our returning guest is Mallory Willits Gakpo. You first heard her on episode 7 and episode 47 of the podcast. And if you haven't heard those episodes, you should probably go back and listen to them before starting this one. In her first appearance, she told us about meeting her now husband, Wisdom, in Ghana. In her second appearance, Mallory left for a 10-day visit to Ghana on January 20th, where Wisdom still lived at the time. During her visit, Wisdom had his meeting at the American Embassy to see if his visa would be approved so he could come to America. Before Mallory left, I asked her to record some thoughts and feelings during her trip using the Voice Memo app on her iPhone. In this, her third appearance, we talked about her American wedding ceremony and what it's been like for the couple since Wisdom arrived in America. And now, onto the show. Hello?
Hey Rob, this is Mallory. Sorry I missed your call. I had to step out really quickly and lost track of the time.
No, it's okay. You're at work, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah. Don't apologize. You're on. You're on. I'm sure a short leash there, and if something happens, you should probably step away. So it's no problem.
Right.
So, but thank you for coming back on the show again. I appreciate it.
Not a problem. I'm excited to be back. Thanks for welcoming me back.
Oh, absolutely. So a lot has happened, and I'll have reminded people at the beginning here that you've been on twice before. So the first time was before you had went back to Ghana. Episode 2 with you was in Ghana. You recorded some things on your phone for us, and that was a really interesting episode. But now we're on the return back to America with your husband. So I think maybe wherever you want to pick up. The last time people heard from you, you were leaving Ghana, and your husband had been approved to come with you. So.
Yeah, a lot has changed. It has been it has been 10 months now since he moved here, which is crazy. It's gone by really fast. So it's probably been about 11 months since I was last on the show.
Mm-hmm.
But basically life has just been about adjusting and getting him to adjust to the culture. We had an American wedding quite a few months after he moved here so that my family and friends could be a part of that and get to meet him. And less than a month after he arrived, we had a welcome party for him so that he could get introduced to the American culture, and people welcomed him and brought him into the family. And then, of course, we took him to Waycross for family camp. We got married at Waycross. So
wow.
a lot has happened. We went on a honeymoon. So we've been traveling and kind of getting to do new experiences together, and I'm getting to introduce him to new things that he's never done before. Like tomorrow we're going to Christmas at the zoo, so we'll see how he likes the cold.
Wasn't there a video you posted of him making snow angels in the... Yeah. It
was an attempt at making snow angels. That's correct.
But, that's something that, you don't think about that when you're, from places like this. But obviously when you come from somewhere else, those type of things that you take for granted are very, out of the ordinary, so.
Yeah, that's totally true. And it's not only taught him things, but it's taught me things too. And something I guess I tell people mostly is, when you're going through the immigration process, you spend so much time excited and focused on the process and ready for it to be over. But you kind of forget the challenges that come after the process and all the adjustments and changes. And for him, he picked up his life and literally moved to a totally new place with the only person he knows being me. That in itself is life-changing and quite a bit of culture shock. So yeah, it's been a journey, but a fun one.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So you guys had your first Thanksgiving together just recently, right?
We did. He thinks we eat way too much here. But yes, we did have our first Thanksgiving here. And he's learned what it feels like to be totally stuffed to where you have to be rolled out of the room.
Right, and let's not breeze past your honeymoon, because I saw the pictures from that, and that looked pretty amazing. Where'd you guys go?
It was wonderful. We went on a 7-day Caribbean cruise. It was kind of a joint effort as far as where we wanted to go. He had always dreamed of going to Jamaica because the culture is very similar to his in Ghana. He just really likes the vibes in Jamaica. He's never been, but he's just always wanted to go and have some friends that are from there that he's met in Ghana. So I desperately wanted to go on another cruise, so I thought, well, why don't we just go on a cruise that goes to Jamaica? So we went to Jamaica, we went to the Cayman Islands, and then we also went to Mexico, Cozumel, Mexico.
Well, that's great. Yeah. And like I said, the pictures looked amazing. But, stepping back a little bit to just when he first came here, you had previously been in something of a long-distance relationship before that, and then all of a sudden you're with each other all the time. So I got to think that was a pretty big transition for you guys.
It definitely was. And, I think the biggest thing that I wasn't prepared for, and I think it's probably fair to say that he wasn't prepared for either, is that, it was total role reversal. When you think about my time in Ghana, it was me being the newcomer. It was me being the one who didn't know how to get around necessarily, didn't know cultural norms, didn't know how to, kind of get the good prices at the market. And so he taught me all of that, and he was the one who really was my caretaker and made sure things happened the way that they were supposed to happen. And he taught me the traditions of his culture. But something that wasn't really thought about, because, it's just not something you really, I guess, think about ahead of time, is we were totally going to reverse roles. I mean, now it was me being the person who was the one who knew everything and who knew how to get us around. And that was challenging for both of us. Previously he was the one who had a job in Ghana and I did not. I was just a volunteer. When he first got here, he had to wait a while before he could get employment. So it was just me. And so, that, especially given his culture and normally, what he's used to, and him being the one who's working and running his own business and being the successful person that he is, that was a huge life change for him. And for me both, because it was kind of like, wait, hold up. When I'm in Ghana, usually you do all this stuff. But now he couldn't do it. He didn't know how to do it. And I respect that, and I understand why he can't, but it was just not something that I don't think we were necessarily prepared for or who had thought through. We certainly got through it, and it wasn't a problem, but it's just those things that you kind of take for granted when you are so focused on immigration. There's not a class for it. They don't tell you what to expect when they come to America. So.
Yeah, and if you guys were from the same country, either you're both from here or you're both from there, at least you could there wouldn't be that disconnect for him, because maybe he could still have that role if you guys were both from there, or it's harder because it's you basically start from zero. It seems like when you're an immigrant, it doesn't matter what kind of accomplishments or anything. The credits don't transfer for a lot of people, and it's upsetting.
Exactly, and it's a hard role to be in because when you're being someone's significant other and their best friend and their biggest supporter, but you're also trying to mentor them and teach them. In some ways, it sounds like you're mothering them. And it sounds like, I know there's been times where it was kind of hey, be easy on me when I'm just trying to teach. But I don't, it's just that's one of those situations where it's a sticky line where you're trying to figure out how can I help this person but do it in a loving way, because I don't want him to get hurt, or I want him to learn the culture and not be embarrassed or ever be put in a situation where people are going to treat him poorly. And speaking of which, that has been a problem. He's been told at his work he can't read the Bible. He's been told lots of crazy things. So it has been an interesting ride for him. And so to figure out kind of like, I think people see him oftentimes as like they know that he doesn't necessarily know what is acceptable in the workforce here, or what the rules are, or what workplaces can do and what they can't do. And so they try and take him for granted, but they don't know his wife is kind of crazy. So
well, I think people see immigrant and they see, take advantage of. I can take advantage of this person because I've been somebody, not an immigrant, of course, but I've been a traveler in other countries, and I felt like a mark, kind of like, oh, well, how can we get one over on this person? They don't know what's going on. Right. And it's the same way here. It's like, how can we squeeze a little bit more out of these people because, who knows, ... So
exactly.
Yeah. So, what about that? What about him? Is he had what kind of work can he do? What type of work? Can you say what kind of work he does, or would you rather not say?
It's been a little bit. He started out initially when he first got here. His first job was doing home health care. He went and got certified as a home health aide. It was supposed to be just kind of like a companion where he sits and maybe takes them to the grocery or spends time with them, but not a whole lot of hands-on care. It wasn't supposed to be CNA work. But that's what it turned into. He applied for a part-time job, but they were working him full-time hours. And so it was just not a good fit. He left that job, ended up getting a job that he absolutely wanted to. He works at a car dealer now. And he wanted to sell cars, but they said, you need to start small. Why don't we just start you off with you being in like the service department and taking in cars that need service. So he's a service attendant. And then he works two jobs. He also delivers pizza at Papa John's. So he works really hard. His goal, what he really wants to do, is drive for Uber or Lyft. But you can't do that until you have your license for a year. So we're just kind of waiting game, because even though he's had his license in Ghana, you have to have it in the U.S. for a year before you can do Uber. So.
Yeah, and just from observing foreign drivers, I think that they're a lot more actually attentive to what's going on than American drivers. I think that's the biggest problem with American drivers, just having seen how people drive overseas, is like, people have to watch out when you're in a not necessarily a completely developed country. Anything could happen, so like your eyes are peeled, but like people here just weaving in and out and not even looking at their phones and everything. I would think that's actually like a better way to learn how to drive, in a more dangerous thing,
Exactly. I think that he actually is probably a better driver than most of the people here. Because he, it is a high traffic there, a lot of people in a small area. There's a lot of like bumper to bumper, weaving in and out of cars, trying to, it's the kind that makes you want to grab the like hold on handle. I'll keep it show appropriate. So I think that, he definitely is more skilled in that way. Like he could drive in Chicago or Atlanta or wherever and not be like stressed.
Right. I'm sure. Okay, so I asked my wife, okay, I'm gonna talk about her wedding. What do you, as you're a woman, what do you want to know? Like, because I feel like whenever I talk to like a family member about somebody's wedding and I relate it to my wife, she's like, well, didn't you ask this? And I'm like, well, I don't know. like what color was the thing? But like, when you were growing up, how did you picture your wedding, and how did it compare to what what actually happened, because you've actually had two ceremonies now. You had one in Ghana, and you've had one here now. So that's something that a lot of people don't do, unless they do a destination wedding on purpose. But
I absolutely have. So I have been very blessed to have two, because I have gotten two cultures out of it. I got the Ghanaian culture in our first wedding and got to have all his wonderful loved ones and family and friends there that are now my family and friends, and got just a piece of what weddings there are like, and with the rich Ghanaian music and African wardrobes and just the kind of the upbeat, fun, and welcoming community that Ghana is. It's kind of like there aren't invitations. It's just like, oh, you're walking by, come on in. And so we got that. But then I also got the wedding that I honestly always wanted here in America. And so I really couldn't sit here and tell you anything that went differently than what I planned. I have been going to Waycross since I was 8 years old. And since I got on staff in 2008, I always told the executive director, please consider letting me have a wedding here. I would always plant that seed with him, and he wasn't sure. And finally, when the time came, I just asked, and I said, I'll do whatever it takes. I'll be flexible with my dates. Whatever I need to do, I'll make it happen. This is what I want. This is my dream. I wanted the wedding in the outdoor chapel. We rebuilt the cross because it was a little bit broken. However, the weather did not cooperate, and it was very cold. And for the sake of being mainly nice to my husband, but also nice to my guests, I moved it inside to the indoor chapel. But it was beautiful. It didn't matter. We got pictures outside still, and honestly, it was just a perfect fall day, and the pictures looked gorgeous. Even though it was cold, you would have never guessed it. And then we had the reception at the retreat house, and we opened it up to where people could book rooms to stay there. A lot of people drove from far away, so after the reception, we had a bonfire. So I got out of my wedding dress, and we went out and sang Waycross Camp songs and had a good time. So it was really perfect. I really did get the dream.
Well, good. But in Ghana, of course, your friends and family weren't there for the most part or at all, right? I mean, that was pretty much just you.
That's correct. Yeah. Nobody was there that that was from America. No.
Wow. Did you know at that time that you eventually would have this in America? I mean, I guess you still were wondering whether or not, of course you could come over or whatever.
Right.
But assuming that happened, was that always the plan for you?
Yeah. So for me, it was kind of like Wisdom didn't care either way. He would have been fine with just one wedding. But for me, it was really important to me that I had a wedding that my family and friends could be at. And that was kind of part of the deal is if we're going to have a wedding there, if we're going to go ahead and do the wedding here rather than just go to the courthouse and do paperwork or whatever, then I want to make sure that we have one here. And so many people who go through immigration, I feel like so often they get busy in their normal lives and life picks up and they forget about the wedding that they wanted, and it never happens. I know quite a few people like that it's just like they had their wedding in the other country and then it kind of fell through on this side. So that was something that I was just, as soon as he got here, I was like, let's get to planning. Let's go get the dress. Let's go do everything that we need to do. I wasn't convinced that I was going to be able to have the wedding that I wanted in the sense of being able to have it at Waycross Inn. But I was convinced I'd have something. I just didn't know that it would work out as great as it did. But yeah, that was kind of always part of the plan is to do both. And I think for us, it makes it that much more special. Everybody always asks, well, which one's going to be your anniversary?
Like, why do you have to choose,
Well, and it's funny because that's exactly what I say. I'm like, I feel like both are so equally important because one, we weren't living together yet. We didn't really have we weren't sharing bills or sharing, didn't have to live as, I guess, most people would say, the traditional married life of being under the same roof and all of those things. But it was the start of our journey, and that's really when the immigration process started for us and everything. But this one, it's kind of like our start here. So we're going to celebrate them both. We don't care.
Sure. Absolutely.
What's any reason to celebrate and eat food? That's what I say. He says I like to eat, but what do you know?
Well, he cooks a fair amount, right? I mean, that's part of what he does, right? I mean,
he does. Yeah, he does. Sometimes he likes to make Ghanaian food, though, and I can eat it sometimes. It depends what it is that he's making.
Wait, did you eat the lamb? Or weren't you posting about him like making some lamb or something?
He makes goat.
Sorry, goat. Goat.
And I cannot do it. I can't.
You can't do it? It's really good.
No, goat
is really good.
I know. Everybody keeps saying that, but like for me, that's like eating my dog. Like I can't. I just can't. I can't bear it.
Okay, well, since you put it that way, I guess I can see what you're saying. But so you were, I know, also debating whether or not you should change your name or what you should change your name to. This has some other cultural implications because the last name that you are taking or would be taking on is very different from the culture which your first name is derived from. So it's right. Kind of a big change. It's not like you're making it Smith or something.
Right. Yeah. Really, the main reason why I wanted to hang on to my last name is my dad's deceased, and my last name is really important to me. In my mind, it's one of the only things I still have of him. And so for me, that was really the part that I was like, I don't know if I can get rid of it. But I also knew how important it was to wisdom and his culture for me to take his last name. So what we ended up doing, or I'm working on doing, is I am actually doing a legal name change to where I'm going to totally drop my middle name and make my maiden last name my middle name, and then take on Wisdom's last name. So it will be Mallory Willits Gakpo.
What is your middle name now?
Christine. And I really could care less about it.
Why did your parents pick it, though?
Well, apparently it was like some grandma or...
You're not familiar with this person?
No. It was like a great relative.
Sure.
It wasn't somebody that was like significantly like important, like a godmother.
Right. Well, no, I mean that makes sense. I mean, you have memories of your father. You don't have memories of this person necessarily.
Christine,
so sure.
My mom probably just liked the way it sounded, quite honestly.
I'm sure Christine was a lovely lady. But I understand what you're going through because my wife struggled with that decision as well because of course she had a middle name before she was married also, and she didn't necessarily want to just chop it off. But now, I think she might be thinking about doing what you're doing. So, yeah, that's a big change. So, are you going? How is that transition going? Are you going in every day around like that, and how are people accepting it?
So right now I haven't started the legal name change process simply because I am working on my licensing exam, and in order to do my licensing exam, I need to have the same legal name that I have now for social work, and then I'll go through the process once I get my license to get everything kind of legally changed with it.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that, yeah.
But, I won't be able to test if I don't have the same name in which I applied, and then I'll have to pay the application fee again and everything else. So I'm just I'm not trying to mess with all of that. Additionally, I didn't want to have any issues when we traveled abroad with my passport not matching and having to take other documents. So it's kind of at a standstill until after come January. Then I'll start really making the changes. But people that work with me, they try and say, "Hey, Mrs.," and then they pause and they're like, "I don't know how to say your new last name that you're going to have." So they just give up.
Oh, man. Sorry, I forgot to ask, what were the colors at your wedding?
Oh, yeah. So we primarily stuck with gold and burgundy, but I had like accents of sage green or a succulent type green color and a little bit of orange and red like for fall. But It was kind of a modge podge. I wouldn't say it was traditional by any means, but nothing I do normally is.
Well, cool. Well, yeah. So, what are you guys doing for the holidays here besides the zoo? Is you got anything special planned for Christmas coming up?
Yeah. So we're going. He loves lights. He gets so excited about the lights, and it makes my heart happy because it's like a child when they first see lights.
Sure.
And he's seen lights before, but not. I don't think really to this full effect. And so he's like, when he's driving for Papa John's, he'll like stop on the side of the road and take a picture of a house and be like, "Look what I saw tonight." I'm like, how many of us but he totally appreciates it, but how many people and it's not like these houses that he sees that are like all out and have like the statues in their yard and the whole house lit up. It's just like a simple like gingerbread frame like house of just like the frame of the house lit up. It's not anything crazy or overwhelming that excites. So we are going to Christmas at the zoo tomorrow. We're going to Newfields, which I hear is wonderful.
Yeah, we're going to go to that.
We're going on Sunday to that. And then we're just going to have Christmas with my family. So we will go to Christmas Eve Mass, of course. Church is a big part of our family culture, and especially a big part of Wisdom's culture. They normally bring in Christmas at church, similar to like our midnight mass, but they do that on the New Year as well. And we don't. We celebrate other ways usually. So, so I'll have to find if there's any churches with midnight masses. But we will go to my brother's house probably and do some opening presents and stuff, which will be kind of a new thing for him. And we always spend Christmas Eve at my mom's side, and then we'll spend Christmas Day at my stepdad's side. We see my dad's grandparents every single Sunday. We go eat with them, so I'm sure we'll see them at some point as well.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I wish you guys good luck in the future. I'm really happy that, I was so relieved when everything worked out and he got to come here, and, I'm just so happy that, you guys were able to make that work, and, I think a lot of people are rooting for you guys to keep having more success. So
thank you so much. It certainly has been a journey, and it's been fun to have so many people excited for us and supporting us through all the changes and all the excitement at the same time. So
cool.
I'm sure there is much more to come.
Oh, absolutely. Well, great. Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your workday to talk to me, and have a good rest of your night.
Thanks. You too.
All right. I'll talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye. If you enjoy this podcast, there are several ways to support it. I have a Patreon account, which can be found at www.patreon.com/Rob Burgess Show Patreon. I hope you'll consider supporting in any amount. Also, please make sure to comment, follow, like, subscribe, share, rate, and review the podcast everywhere it's available, which includes iTunes, YouTube, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play Music, Facebook, Twitter, Internet Archive, TuneIn, and RSS. It really helps. The official website for the podcast is www.therobburgessshow.com. You can find out more about me by visiting my website, www.thisburgess.com. Until next time.